Paul continues on this theme of you have become. You have become because you have already arrived at the teacher, and you have taken on this role of genuine covenant membership. And it is with that idea that we move into chapter 4, starting in verse 1, and we read, I mean that the heir, as long as he's a child, is no different from a slave, though he's the owner of everything, but he's under guardians and managers until the date set by the father. Let's read my comments, and we're going to see how it ties into the paidagogos of the previous chapter, although from a slightly different angle. The whole midrash that Paul is going to be giving to us in these first 7 verses of chapter 4 is a teaching on sonship from a first century perspective, conveniently couched in terminology that the Galatians could easily identify with, which is what? That of Roman law. I believe the Jewish people are the child, heirs according to birth, yet slaves to sin and death, owners of the promises, that is, the estate of Hashem, as spelled out to the fathers of the faith, Abraham, Isaac, and Yaakov. In this passage, Paul reveals that Am Yisrael, the people of Israel, does enjoy covenant status on a limited basis. This is why I went through the lengthy discussion about limited covenant membership and lasting covenant membership, right? The 2 levels of covenant membership that we read about in the Torah. Remember, Paul says in the book of Romans that not all Israel is Israel. We read about that in, I think, Romans chapter 9, leading up to chapter 11 with this olive tree theology. Not all Israel is Israel. What does he mean that not all Israel is Israel? He means that within greater Israel, there's a remnant Israel. And the remnant Israel is the true and lasting covenant members of the promise versus national Israel, the larger part of Israel that has not yet espoused to faith in Messiah. Although they are covenant members, they are only temporal covenant members. So there is the Israel within Israel. That is to say, there's the remnant Israel that exists within national Israel. Okay, let's keep going. So Paul reveals that Am Yisrael does enjoy covenant status on a limited basis due to being merely born into Abraham's family. Yet, he does not emphasize this truth unnecessarily here in the book of Galatians, as I believe it had a tendency to lead the average Jewish person to an illogical conclusion, one that suggested full and lasting covenant membership based on their position at birth or conversion for the non-native born Gentile, without having arrived at, quote, the time set by the Father, end quote. Guys, following what I'm saying? For a more fuller treatment of this idea of Jewish people and their tendency to misunderstand their covenant position within God, read Romans chapter 2 starting in verse 17 and don't finish till you get down to about chapter 3 verse 23, I think. That whole section is a nice complement to Galatians chapter 2 verse 15 going down to the end of chapter 3. So read those 2 on your own. Galatians chapter 2 and 3, and read that along with Romans chapter 2 and 3, and you'll see how they kind of fit together, hand in glove.